Welcome back to the Coaches Unscripted Podcast. I'm your host, Trey Belcher. With me, as always, my tag team partner, looking as only he can look, Corey Smallwood. How's it going, Corey?
It's going well, sir. How are you doing?
At ease, soldier. And with us today is Pete Holman, a physical therapist and an innovator in the fitness industry. He is the inventor of the swing trainer, the TRX rip trainer, the Nautilus glute drive, and the new glute slide. He is a former U.S. Taekwondo champion. Ladies and gentlemen, Pete Holman. Welcome in, Pete.
Hey, thanks, Trey. I got a lot to live up to here after that.
Well, we try to butter you up as much as possible to A, keep you here longer, and B, keep you coming back. So just know there's plenty more where that came from.
That was the bio your publicist sent us, by the way.
Oh,
yeah, that's
fantastic.
True. Yeah.
You had to work through my agent first. I hope we got good money for you.
Yeah. Well, and he said, read it verbatim or the interview's over. So I said, well, you got it. No problem.
Got it.
Love it.
Pete's like, oh, so we're starting off this with lies. Nothing but lies. Great.
Yeah, it's unscripted. So what else are you going to do when you sit around with your buddies?
That's right.
So, Pete, you've invented so many tools now, and you just came out with the glute slide. Take us through your process. When you analyze the market or the gaps in the market, how do you conjure up these things? Where do you go to develop these products? How does this process happen for you?
Yeah, it started out as an accident. I was in Aspen, and I was a physical therapist working at a small physical therapy clinic, outpatient orthopedic clinic in Aspen. It was a really cool clinic. And we had all the widgets, the BOSU balls and the foam rollers and stability balls and medicine balls and tilt boards and BOSU balls and all the stuff that you'd want as an orthopedic physical therapist. The problem is you could never find it. It was strewn all over the room, and it was kind of a hazard. The place just looked like my daughter's room, basically. I've got an adolescent daughter. So you go into her room and you're like, where are we? Like, looks like a bomb went off. So I said, there's got to be a way to organize this stuff. And I kind of took out literally a napkin, and I'm like drawing. We had a medicine ball rack. And I thought to myself, couldn't you expand a medicine ball rack into a more like a medicine ball rack on steroids? And you could put maybe foam rollers and elastic resistance cords and body blades and things like that in there. And I created what's called the functional training rack. And interestingly enough, because this is a perform better crowd, interestingly enough, when I walked away from that business with my tail between my legs, because we'll get into this as how hard business is as you get going. Chris Poirier from Perform Better said, listen, I'll buy your inventory. I like I sent him a product. He said, I really like this. He said, the packaging is a nightmare and you got some issues to work out, but you're in this hard spot. I'll buy your inventory and, we'll kind of license the product from you. And that was the start of the functional training rack. And that kind of, was the catalyst for me kind of going, listen, I see a problem in the industry. There's got to be a solution. There's got to be a better way. And what happens is when you start a business and you don't have any business background at all, I'm a physical therapist and strength coach. So I have no clue, I could barely balance my checkbook. And now all of a sudden I've got to balance P&Ls and I've got to do, operating expenses, and I got to figure out how to market and distribute and warehouse and kit and fulfill and all this stuff. It was pretty overwhelming. But boy, it was a masterclass in kind of what not to do. And then I said, wait a minute, what if I could improve on this process and learn from my mistakes? And it started a really wonderful trajectory of, instead of just thinking of myself as a physical therapist and as a strength coach, as a personal trainer, as an ex-athlete, I thought of myself as an entrepreneur for the first time in my life. And the next thing you know, I came up with my next product, which was called the Core 10 Trainer, which turned into the Ripcore Effects, which I licensed to TRX, and it became the TRX Rip Trainer. If you don't know what the TRX Rip Trainer is, it's a tremendous rotational training device. It's literally, imagine a hockey stick with the end cut off and then a resistance cord on the end. So you have this long lever that you can manipulate, and it's great for torsional buttressing stuff. It's great for push-pull mechanics, the Serape effect. It's great for balance and stability and back health. And of course, rotational power when you get that thing slinging. And that is iterated into my latest product called the Golf Forever Swing Trainer. And I've partnered with this tremendous company called Golf Forever. And they have the number one golfer in the world, Scotty Scheffler, endorsing our product. I don't know how they landed that, but anyhow. And it's the idea is golfers are notorious for not warming up before they hit range balls or before they play their round. And they're notorious for not staying in shape. Not all golfers live in Texas or California where they can play year round. So if you're in Chicago, okay, and it's January or February, and I know they're thinking golf. They're excited about golf. They're following golf, but they're not necessarily working out. They're not stretching out their T-spine and their hips. They're not working on core strength. They're not working on balance or any kind of strength or power. And then all of a sudden, the spring comes and they get a bucket of 100 range balls. And what do you think happens? They come to see me in the physical therapy clinic. So anyhow, the swing trainer, and then I kind of kept going. I went and created something called a plate-loaded hip thrust machine called the Glute Drive. I licensed that to Nautilus. That's actually been one of my best kind of consistent selling products of all time. It's just a really basic concept. We've all done glute bridges, and it's kind of iterated into the elevated back position and elevated foot position so you get more range of motion. I mean, the hip thrust, everybody thinks the hip thrust is, that's a booty exercise. Oh, that's Brett Contreras. It's all about bikini models. It's a glute bridge. Every strength coach on the face of the earth has prescribed a single leg or double leg glute bridge to activate the glutes and get them going. Now we've just added more range of motion, and you can progressively overload the movement pattern, which is how you build strength. So, so I created the Nautilus Glute Drive and something called the Escape Barrel, which is a push-pull kind of a sled, but you can also carry it like a farmer's carry. So you can push, pull, and carry, which is, if you had only 3 exercises to do and you could push, pull, and carry something, I don't know, that's a pretty good combo. Pretty good. And then the product I'm most excited about now, which is it's kind of like when you have multiple kids. Sometimes, it's not that you're not excited about the older kids, but that new kid is the shiny object. So my new kid is called the Glute Slide, and I really love this product because it's very simple. It's a slide platform that you can load with elastic resistance. So imagine the Ultra Slide. I don't know if you guys have ever trained hockey players or, and you get on, you put the little booties on and you slide to the left and then you slide to the right. And it's kind of this cool flowy motion, but it's hard to learn. There's no way to overload it. And you got to put boots on and take them off. It's a great product, but I thought, man, there could be something better. So this Glute Slide, you can change the resistance on the fly, add decreased resistance, but you get that frontal plane loading. And you get the eccentric component too, which is, if you're a strength coach or trainer, you know that eccentric loading is critical to prevent injury and to improve performance. So you get that in the frontal plane of motion, which is hard to do. And of course, you can train in the sagittal plane. And the Glute Slide, I sound like a sales guy now. This is terrible. Do you see what I've become? I used to be such a humble physical therapist. And now I'm like, it chops, it slices, it dices, it minces. But the Glute Slide also does hip adduction. So the inner thigh muscles, which I'm really diving into this, you guys. I'm a physical therapist. I understand anatomy. I understand strength and conditioning. I've been doing this for 35 years. Somehow, in my mind, I would do a Copenhagen side plank. I would introduce that to athletes. I might do some other stuff that's functional, but that was it. I never really focused on adductors. You start looking at the adductors, the pectineus, the adductor longus, the adductor brevis, the adductor magnus, the gracilis. That's 5 powerful adductors. Even the magnus does some extension, but those are 5 powerful adductors that I don't think we work enough in the strength and conditioning environment. And so this Glute Slide, there's a little block that you can put on the distal end of the machine, and now you can do resisted adduction to strengthen that massive muscle group, and not just for performance, but for durability. That's basically my process. Is I see a problem in the industry, and then I have the audacity to think that I can make a machine and pull it off and license it or sell it on my own, and that's like a roll of the dice. But that's what I do.
And it's one thing to come up with a single or a singular creation, and I think if you've been in this industry long enough, you're like, God, if I could just think of that one invention. Or I have members come to me and like, when are you going to invent a piece of equipment? I was like, if I don't think about it every damn day of my life, but you've come up with multiple ones. And that's what just is so fascinating to me. It's like, there's only a handful of people, we're talking with Greg Justice and Jack LaLanne or Augie or some of these guys that just really were these inventors. And, we're lumping you into with guys like Frazier and the names that people, up and coming trainers, need to know. Boy Simonson, I mean, just great pioneers, and you're one of those dudes. Like, we got you on our podcast. It's so cool, man.
Wow, I'm humbled by. I mean, was I mentioned in the same paragraph as Jack LaLanne? I mean, come on, Coach Corey.
Well,
I don't know.
you look up there with your
That's a stretch.
And
but I do appreciate it, and I think innovation and creativity and curiosity is kind of really what gets me going and gets me excited. In fact, I'm reading this book called The Art of the Impossible. It's a Stephen Kotler book. It's on flow state. So I don't know if anybody's gotten into flow state, but I used to compete in martial arts, and I tell you what, flow state, there's a lot of components to flow state and getting into flow. And one of them, if you're about to get kicked in the head with somebody's shin, you can get there a little bit faster than if you're just playing chess or whatever. But Stephen Kotler is this renowned kind of researcher on flow state. And he says the first thing you need to get into flow state is an intrinsic driver called curiosity. Right. So I think his 5 drivers are curiosity, passion, purpose, autonomy, and self-mastery. And I've really kind of glommed onto this. And I'm like, if you're not curious, like, curiosity is kind of the foundational pillar of any entrepreneur or creator or innovator. You got to be kind of curious. And that stimulates thought. And when you have thought stimulated, you kind of think, what if I could create something? What would it look like? What purpose would it serve? That's one of the next intrinsic drivers is passion. And passion is, I think, again, these aren't mutually exclusive. Like, usually if you're really curious about something, you're kind of passionate about it, and that stems or stimulates the curiosity. And then what's the purpose? For me, in the fitness industry, I don't think people understand what we do. I mean, you know what you do, but sit down at the end of the night and think about how many people you positively impacted on that day in the weight room, in the boutique studio, or maybe you're a massage therapist, or maybe you're a gym owner or operator, and you have 100 members, 500 members, 1,000 members, whatever it is. You're changing lives. This is the most important thing. If you do not have your health, we learned this through COVID. If you don't have your health, you've got nothing. And I've brushed shoulders with a bunch of people. I lived in Aspen for 20 years. So all I worked with was multi-gazillionaires. I mean, guys and gals that flew in on Gulfstream airplanes. The Aspen airport has Gulfstreams lined up like they're Kias at the Kmart shopping center. I mean, it's unbelievable. And these people, all they want to do is spend their money and enjoy their life. And as soon as they don't have their health, they're in trouble. And that's why they spend lots of money hiring somebody like me as a personal trainer or physical therapist. Then they go get a massage. Then they go to yoga or Pilates. They're just invested in their health. So that's my purpose. My whole mission in life is to share my gift, which has been health, wellness, vitality, that competitive drive. I want to share that with other people because I know what it's done in my life. You guys know what it's done for you, having that focus. And I want to share that with other people. I think it's extremely valuable. And then the 4th intrinsic driver is autonomy. And that's an important one. We've all probably had that dominant boss in a corporate environment that kind of told you what to do and my way or the highway. And you just felt like you were a robot. That's not an environment for flow state, right? You're never going to get in the flow with that. You got to have some autonomy. And there's a lot of research on that. In fact, Google, all their engineers, they give them like 20% of the day as blue sky time or whatever they call it. That's a Todd Durkin term. But anyhow, that's what I'm using. So Todd Durkin, there you go, tip of the hat. Blue sky time. Hey, think freely, think clearly, do whatever you want for 20% of the day. The other 80% of the day, we've got initiatives, we got marching orders, you stay on task. Well, guess what they've created in that 20% time? Engineers have created Gmail, Google Maps, the list goes on. And that's because they had the autonomy to kind of go, hey, do whatever you want. Think outside the box. And that's what's really exciting about being an innovator and entrepreneur is you kind of can do whatever you want. Obviously, there's inherent risks to that. And then finally, this is my favorite one of all, is self-mastery. And self-mastery is the thing that everybody knows they have to do, but nobody wants to do it, right? It's like the Beatles, and wherever they were in Denmark, or they had some nightclub they played in 7 nights a week. They were the club band. But it wasn't just at night. They played these were big drinkers. Maybe it was in Germany. These were big drinkers, right? So they come in at lunch, they play a set, they play in the afternoon because people are getting liquored up in the afternoon. They play in the early evening, and then they play in the late hours of the night. They do like 4 sets a night, 7 days a week. They did that for years. And that's what Malcolm Gladwell talked about in Tipping Point, the 10,000 hour rule, where they just hammered and hammered and hammered. And everybody said, oh my gosh, the Beatles, they're such natural, organic musicians. They're so, inspired. It's like, no, man, they did this every day for years until they had so many hours amassed. They'd broken strings, broken drums, falling off the stage. They'd been through all that. And now all of a sudden they're in this package that's delivered to the public and they look pretty polished, but it's because they have that self-mastery. So anyhow, that was a tangent on flow state. But I think the reason I've been so excited about being an entrepreneur and innovator is that for me, getting into flow state is what I used to covet in martial arts. So I was on the U.S. National Taekwondo team. I started very late in life. I didn't start training until I was 21. And when I started training, I just fell in love with it. And so I kind of dove in with both feet, or maybe I should say head first. And within 2 years, I was a black belt, which was unheard of. Nobody gets a black belt in 2 years. It usually takes 4 or 5 years. And then 3 years, or maybe it's 4 years after that, I was on the U.S. national team. And then 6 years after that, after I started, I was the team captain. And I wanted to get into flow state because that's when you feel your best and you perform the best. And so since I retired, and of course I jumped back into it and did masters boxing, which was really fun. All of a sudden in the middle of a fight, you lose one shoulder. You're old. I mean, give it up, Pete. You're not making any money. You're just, this is ego lifting. Stupid. But no, I'm going to fight at Gleason's gym in Brooklyn, New York, masters boxing. And you lose a shoulder, and then and then you lose a knee. And so anyhow, I'm done with fighting. I've got other ways to compete. And now the way I try to find flow state is through business and innovation. And it helps me with those 5 intrinsic drivers to maybe try to find flow state. It's the best feeling in the world. You guys have been there. It's not, maybe a handful of times in my life, athletically and business-wise, I've been in flow, maybe presenting a couple times. But it's the best feeling in the world. Like everything you say, it lands, and you're sharp and you're witty and you're quick and you sound profound in your statements if you're presenting, or if you're an athlete. Every move is like butter and effortless. And so, long answer to your question, Coach, but that's why I do what I do. I want to find flow state again, and I want to serve my community. I just think health and fitness is the greatest industry on the face of the earth. So I'll never stop doing this stuff.
It's interesting that you said you and I have had one conversation in the past, and hearing your process on these things ties a whole lot of loose ends together for me. So you and I were at the Idea East conference 2019 before COVID in DC. And I was working there for FMS, and you came up to me and just started peppering me with questions. And I was like, this guy's presenting. What's he coming to me for? Like, I'm just the guy working the booth here. But it was all these questions about the intricacies of FMS. And it never made sense, because I'm thinking Trey and I'm thinking Pete. But now just knowing the curiosity, knowing more of your process, knowing how you're seeking these answers and trying to figure out how to reconcile things in your own brain so that you can take it to your community, that ties up a whole lot of loose ends for me. And then in the fighting world, because I did some boxing after college too. I started boxing when I was 21. And you get to the same point where you're like, I'm not going to be a world champion. It ain't no point in getting my head beat in for no good reason when we're not going anywhere with this. But when you're in that world, when you're in that competition world, whether it's team sports or individual sports, and you feel like you have some mastery of it, I think business, when you don't have a background in business is always the next frontier, or maybe the final frontier, because you're so bad at it and you know nothing about it, but that curiosity drives you a little bit. So you think, well, if I can master this is going to be really hard for me, but this is where I have to go. Because I'm so autonomous that I don't want to listen to anybody else. I can't work for anybody else anymore because I'm too much of a malcontent and too defiant to work for anybody else. But I think it's a natural progression somehow, some way, to get from the combat sports into business because business is really hard and it drives that curiosity.
It's like getting kicked in the head, is what
I was
you're
just
saying?
going to say, it punches you in the face on a daily.
You know, what's interesting is that, and maybe I'm guilty of the same thing, is we look at businessmen and businesswomen as kind of these unique unicorns. Like, oh my gosh, they've got an MBA from Stanford, or they went to Columbia, or they went to Oxford, or, you know, whatever. They're these amazing people, and they just have this gift. And I'm watching this on the History Channel. I think it's called Mega Brands, The Building of America, or something like that. It is the most, I was like, you know, everybody says, oh, I binge Netflix. I don't really do that. I get bored. I can't sit there. I was binging watching this Mega Brands. And they talked about Nike, and they were talking about all these amazing Amazon. But one of the stories they shared was the starting of FedEx. And the guy that started FedEx was a Yale grad. Brilliant. And his father was a multimillionaire. I think the guy inherited like $4 million when his father passed away. And this was years ago. But he was a Yale grad, and he went with this idea of having kind of like a central distribution hub to get packages and things faster to different areas. And he went to his Yale professor, who was brilliant, and he had this well-articulated plan, and he had P&Ls and flow charts and presented immaculately. And the professor said, no, it's not a good idea. It's not going to work. And so he walked away with his tail between his legs. And he said, I don't know. I'm just going to keep plugging away at this. I think I'm onto something. And sure enough, he ends up kind of in the aviation world. He learns that, he starts buying planes and refurbishing planes. And what he learns is when you have to refurbish, or when you have to work on a plane that's down, it's a mechanical issue. You need a part for the plane. Well, if the part takes 6, 7, 8 days to get to you, you're losing 6, 7, 8 days of revenue from the plane. You know, maybe it's a commercial plane, maybe it's a cargo plane. You're losing revenue. He said, we got to be able to get parts to these plane mechanics faster. And that was kind of the first iteration of FedEx, as he was getting plane parts to down planes. And he spun that into FedEx. And so the point of that story is that business people, even the top people with the best degrees, they kind of are rolling the dice. They don't know. People tell them that's a terrible idea or that's a great idea. Sometimes they fail, sometimes they succeed. There's a lot of luck and a whole lot of elbow grease that goes into succeeding at a business. I'm still, honestly, people come to me and they say, hey, you're an expert. I'm like, no, I'm not an expert. And even the people, it's like, stockbrokers, stock analysts, you go to them, you think they're experts, and the market crashes. The market explodes. They don't know what's going on. Nobody knows what's going on. It's world economics. And yeah, there's some people, Warren Buffett, whatever. There's people that have figured it out better than others. But still, if you ask Warren Buffett, he'd be like, I don't know, man. I've got a formula. I'm doing the best I can, but I can't predict the market. And you can't predict business. What you can predict and control is your vision and those intrinsic drivers. If those are in place, then you've got a chance of doing something. And then again, sometimes it's timing. If you have the right product, the right time, the right place, the right price point, warehousing and shipping and manufacturing goes well. I mean, I just launched a product, the Glute slide, which we've been talking about a little bit, and it's made in China. The product, if I made it in America, we would have to charge about $2,000 for one unit. Well, right now we're charging $995, and prices to go up. Just kidding. $995. But I couldn't do that for that price in America. And then all of a sudden these tariffs come about. The administration, starts playing hardball with overseas manufacturers and distributors of products, steel and aluminum. This isn't a political statement. I'm just saying that speaking the facts is that the tariffs went up. So now all of a sudden we're in a little bit of a scramble fest here, trying to figure out, well, are they going to go back down? Are they going to stay up? Should we hold off on inventory that is waiting in China to be delivered to our U.S. warehouse? Because if it comes at the wrong time, we could have 145% increased tariff on it. Or if it comes at the right time, we can only have a 30% tariff on it, which is what we want. So it's like, what do you do with the cargo? Anyhow, all that stuff kind of compounds itself into whether you can succeed or not at business. And so it's very challenging, but I love it.
Yeah, and I think that all of those are great things to think about. Even if you're a trainer just starting out, or you're getting your first job at a big box gym or at a boutique, even though you're working for somebody else, you are still your brand. You are still a business in its own right. And, we've talked with a lot of our guests about this. And when you talked about self-mastery and even how quickly you earned your black belt, I mean, that was fast, but it's still 2 years, of dedication, practice, hard work. The Beatles, if you ask anybody about their early on, they'll tell you they were terrible musicians. So people just getting their certification, I just got NASM certified or CFSC certified. All right, now I'm a rock star. So what do you talk to when you mentor newer coaches about working on that self-mastery before you are given the autonomy to be your own entity?
Corey, this is such a great question. I love this question. It's like a softball. I don't think you intended it to be a softball, but 2 things. One is you got to go to a PB Summit. I mean, come on, there's 3 events this summer. Go to Chicago, go to Long Beach, go to Rhode Island, and learn from other experts. Infuse yourself in the industry, make contacts, get inspiration, find motivation, and learn your craft. That's the self-mastery. But the second thing that doesn't cost you anything and doesn't force you to travel out of your comfort zone is just a commitment to excellence. So I just finished this book called Excellence Wins. Horst Schultz is the founder and CEO of the Ritz-Carlton. So the Ritz-Carlton, I mean, I'm guarantee everybody I talk to or I'm speaking to right now on the audience knows what the Ritz-Carlton is. It's one of the premier hotels on the face of the earth. And there's a reason everybody knows what it is and the brand, because this guy built an impeccable brand by this commitment to excellence. And if you've ever noticed at the Ritz-Carlton, it doesn't matter if you're a bellhop, a concierge, a maid, a maintenance person, a front desk staff, a sales expert. They all kind of have this inherent passion and enthusiasm about what they do and a sense of importance. And so it's the little things that you can do day to day. I mean, you're a trainer and you get a new client, okay? And you think, wow, that went really well. I did a little assessment. I learned something from Gray Cook. I did a little assessment. I found out that they've got a little bit of weakness in the lateral hip. So we're going to strengthen that and their posture. And I did some things and they really had a good session. Check in on them. Send them a text. Hey, Bob, great session today. You got any questions for me? Right? The next day goes by, there's no session, but you're still thinking, hey, Bob's a new client. I'm building my clientele. I'm not going to pester him, but hey, Bob, how'd lunch go today? I know we talked about you trying to drop some pounds and get, kind of find your fitness again. And I know you struggled at lunches. Remember, we talked about having some healthy protein at lunch. How did it go? What did you have? Here's what I had, and a picture of grilled salmon and steamed broccoli or whatever, not rubbing it in their face, but just peppering. And all of a sudden, this client says, you're only six months into training. They say, my trainer is the best trainer on the face of the earth. They ask me about my progress. They ask me about my little injuries. They follow up with me on my diet and nutrition. They're invested in me. And who doesn't want somebody to be invested in them? You go into the restaurant and your experience starts with that front desk, the hostess, or the host. And they come out and they're either like, hey, how you doing? Yep, back here. Or they're like, hey, Mr. Holman, welcome back. So great to see you again. How's that young daughter? How's the volleyball going? Fantastic. Well, I got your special table for you. Come on back. We got great special offerings tonight. Can't wait to serve you tonight. Your experience is like, wow, this guy knows my name. He's engaging. They want the best for me. And that costs nothing. So as a trainer starting out, dive into your self-mastery. That's a no-brainer. Go to Perform Better Summits. Go to an FMS course. Go to a Strong First. Whatever it is, keep your education because that really will help solidify you. But there's no better education than experience. And there's no better way to retain clients and get new clients than pouring into your clients and just doing small things that really make a difference.
Yeah, you talk about those things. And that's one of the big things that we're here for is you care about people. You talk about investing, you care about them. And that's a very human concept that has nothing to do with training, frontal plane, this, that, the other. But also the other part, and this is to both of your points, your certifications are your barrier of entry. That is your minimum qualification. The education just begins at that point. So you always seek that self-mastery. You always seek the people who have done more or gone before, who have invented 50 products like Pete Holman, not just living in your silo. You keep seeking the information, how to perform better, and you continue to grow so that you can invest more into your people, because those people are going to tell all their friends, and all their friends are going to want a piece of you too. And that's how you build your business, and that's how you build a better life and a better community, because ultimately it's all about the community and having a place to belong to, and just having those priorities in the right spot makes a huge difference in your business, and having that desire to grow and to help others grow, and for everybody to grow together so that you can all get to self-mastery.
And I think it comes into with even the very first pillar, curiosity, is be curious about your clients. Or when you're at a Perform Better, be curious about the presenters. I mean, that's why we started this podcast in the first place, is because we are actually curious about everybody's story that comes on here. And we're curious about Pete Holman. We were talking, it's like, let's learn more about Pete and let's talk to Pete. And we're just authentically curious. And I think that'll take a lot of coaches a long way if they just get more curious.
Yeah. It's interesting. People always say this is cliche, but the personal aspect of personal training is at the start for a reason, right? You're building personal relationships with clients, and not everybody's good at that. Not everybody has the same level of engagement. Some people, and I see this in the gym all the time, and they're very clinical, and they're thinking X's and O's, and they're thinking about submax VO2 and T-test times, and they have that left brain kind of overload. And all I would say is, those people, you can step out of your comfort zone just a little bit. And when that client comes in, give them a smile, give them a fist pump. Hey, how's your weekend? I'm at this gym now called Elite Performance, and there's a lot of young athletes in there, developing athletes. Some of these kids are going to go on to play some college sports, and some of them won't. And it's a trendy thing to do, to send your kid to a high level performance. And it's great because they're learning life skills as they're doing this stuff. But it's just amazing to see when the kids come in and the coach actually says, "Hey, Joe, what's going on, man? How'd that date go? I know you were nervous about that, man." And it's like, it's not all about the velocity and acceleration and performance. You're trying to mentor these young kids in some instances and help them to be successful human beings and adapted, well-adjusted, well-adapted human beings. So that personal component doesn't cost you a thing. And by the way, in physical therapy, it's even more pronounced. So somebody comes in to an orthopedic clinic, and let's say they got a fresh ACL, okay? They've just torn their ACL. Who knows? Maybe they're a young gal, soccer player. They're 17 years old. They've never had an injury in their life. They come into some physical therapy clinic where everybody's injured. They're freaked out. They're nervous. They're trying to hold back tears. Their parents are with them. That injury healing starts with how you engage them and how you talk to them and how you ensure them, hey, you got right ACL? Darn it. I've got my right and my left ACL. You know what? I've been through this process, not just with a lot of patients, but personally, I got you. I know exactly how to take you back to an elite level status. And it starts right now. Come on back to my office. And the next thing you know, the girl goes from like tearing up in both eyes to kind of like, hey, this guy gets me. He's empathetic. And that's all I needed to kind of just like, all right, the process has begun. It's the old Bruce Lee thing, you throw the rock into the calm pond and it starts a ripple, right? And the ripple, that small one little ripple, spreads all the way across the pond. And that's what we're trying to do in this profession, is we're just trying to spread ripples.
We try to do the same exact thing. And we were talking about Alan Cosgrove earlier in a different context, but he talked about that same thing with that Scottish brogue. It was a little more endearing, as we said earlier, but we're doing the same thing, just trying to throw those rocks and create as many ripples. And as we do that, we're trying to help the industry be bigger, but also help shrink it down and connect everybody. Because when you have those connections, when we can reach out to you, Pete, and say, hey, we got this question about this, or you can reach out to us just like we did back at Idea and say, hey, I'm curious about this. That's the rising tide that raises all ships, that causes lots of ripples in the ocean. So what we're trying to do, and why we're glad that you're here to be able to talk, and we are curious, and we talk, we tell our guests, and we told you earlier, talk as long as you want, because we want to hear the stories, and our audience wants to hear the stories. And if we've got follow-ups, we're going to keep asking questions. We're going to pepper questions until it's time to get out of here. So the ripples and the rising tides and connecting the industry, that's what we're all here for. And that's why we're glad that we got you on to be able to share your stories.
Man, I love it. I'm honored. And, I think one of the challenges we have now, and a lot of it's from social media, is that in order to kind of get views and clicks and followers, you have to be pretty bold and audacious with your offerings and with your program and with your system. And a lot of times it creates this contention between practitioners. Like, this is the system you need to be following. If you're not doing this, not only are you missing the boat, you're unintelligent. Can't you see what I see? And, I don't know if that's, I've been doing this for 35 years, guys. I feel like I am just in the infancy stages of learning what to do. I think there's certain things I do really well. My daughter, who's going through some stress fractures in her lumbar spine, and she's a Division I volleyball player. And it's before this issue, she didn't really want to train with me. And she, it's just, like your kids don't want to be trained by you and told what to do. We all know that. But now I said, can I just take you through one little workout? And she started to see how I did things differently from her strength coach at her college. And she's got an ATC that also helps her. They don't have 35 years of experience as an elite level athlete, as a physical therapist who's treated these type of patients that end up with a pars defect or spondylosis or spondylolisthesis or a fusion surgery in their lumbar spine. And on top of it, I've kind of got this strength and conditioning background. So I forgot that I'm pretty adept at taking somebody that's injured, that's an athlete, and bringing them back towards function as an athlete. So there are things I'm good at. But then I was listening to a post today on Instagram. Somebody was talking about programming. And I thought, man, I got some work to do on my programming. He trains a bunch of athletes at a time, NFL, NBA, and he's just riffing on different programming and, how he progresses people through that. I'm weak at that. Kettlebells, I'm weak at. There's a lot of things I need to learn and grow at. And so just my point is, guys, don't ever get too cocky. There's always something to learn. There's always somebody to learn from. The reason I came up to you, Trey, in that booth is because I had read some books by Greg Cook, Athletic Body and Balance. I was intrigued by FMS. I had been through a quick course at TRX when I worked at TRX. Somebody came in and did some FMS stuff. I think it was a pretty smart system. If you think about it, there's other movement systems. There's other movement screens. I don't know if there's anything that's really better for groups that replaces FMS. If there is, let me know. Follow me on Instagram and tell me, oh, no, I found something better. But anyhow, I think Greg Cook's a brilliant guy. I really like his demeanor. And so I was intrigued by FMS. And my point is, I'm still learning and growing, even though I'm a dinosaur in the industry. Just keep learning and growing. And don't ever think you got it all figured out, because I'm telling you, nobody's got it all figured out. We're going to make mistakes, and we're going to learn and grow from them.
We're going to be in Chicago next week at the Perform Better Summit. So will you have a glute slide with you there? Or are you going as a student?
There is a high probability that I will be in Perform Better Chicago next week, and there might just be a glute slide for people to play around with and test out. And it's something that, again, just, that's what's great about movement coaches and strength coaches is they might be skeptical. But if you're just willing to try something, you got to try it out, check it out, and then see if it's something that might apply to your clients or athletes. The thing that's cool about the glute slide, and I always like equipment that's easy to educate, easy to get on and kind of learn how to use, and that's scalable. Those three things, like my TRX Rip Trainer and the Golf Forever Swing Trainer, it's scalable. It's a great piece of equipment. It's portable. It's not easy to use. It takes some instruction. And that's why on Golf Forever, we have an app that you get the app, and then we have coaches like myself that teach you how to use the product. But my better products, as far as sales and marketing go, are ones that are easier to understand and to teach. And the Glute slide is just very simple. I can teach you 2 moves in a minute, and you either like it or you don't. I have a feeling you're going to like it, though.
I'm looking forward to it because if you follow Pete on Instagram or social media, you've seen some of it, and a lot of the top training gyms in the country already have a unit or 2 there. And it looks like I love the simplicity, right? And it looks like as long as you have the resistance set properly, how are you going to screw it up?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's challenge accepted if anybody
can.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
I feel like, damn, Smallwood broke another piece of equipment.
I've got my eye on you, buddy. I'm going to be watching you at the summit. But yeah, come by if you're in Chicago, and I'll probably be in Long Beach and Rhode Island if they invite me back. I got to do good at this first one. But yeah, if you're at one of these summits, come by and please introduce yourself, and I'd love to get to know you. And then, check out the Glute slide, see what you think.
So where can people find the Glute slide?
Well, we're at Glute slide on Instagram, and that's the less salesy kind of thing. You just kind of surf around and see what it is and how it works. But gluteslide.com is the website, and it's actually a pretty slick website. It's one thing I've learned over years is you don't have to spend tons of money on a website. And this website is a lot of organic content, a lot of stuff I've shot in my own garage gym. We've bootstrapped this company. That's something if you're launching a gym or launching a product or, digital app or something, coaching app, just learn how to bootstrap and save money because cash is king. So check it out on the website, gluteslide.com, or on Instagram at gluteslide. And then I'm Pete Holman 1, the letter or the number 1, also on Instagram. And I've got content on there too.
Perfect. Everybody come see Pete at Perform Better Chicago. Check out the Glute Slide, gluteslide.com, and always at Pete Holman 1. We always give a plug for your Instagram handles. Hopefully we don't screw it up and have to do it 3 times and make that go into the gag reel. That's one of the bloopers I butchered one time. I'll show you that one day when we're sitting around over a beverage. But
you're going to nail this one. I have a strong, confident feeling about you guys.
Oh yeah.
Do that again.
Oh yeah.
Let's do that again.
Yeah. Well, that was the G-rated version of how we're gonna do this. Yeah. So no, I'm practiced. I'm ready to go here. So, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for joining us on the Coaches Unscripted Podcast. We hope today's stories have inspired and empowered you. Please connect with us on Instagram at Coaches Unscripted Podcast. Give us a like, follow, a comment, and a share to continue the conversation. Stay updated for future episodes. Follow Pete on Instagram at Pete Holman 1. We thank you, Pete, for joining us. For Pete Holman, Corey Smallwood, I'm Trey Belcher. Keep coaching from the heart and building strong communities.